Let's get to our first guest, conservative Pennsylvania Congressman Guy Reschenthaler. Congressman, it's great to see you, sir. You heard Dick Cheney there.
Thanks for having me on.
He doesn't think Al Qaeda, China, Iran, or Russia are the biggest threats to America. He thinks President Trump is the greatest threat to the United States. With this level of Trump derangement syndrome, didn't he just undermine every bit of credibility the Never Trump GOP ever pretended to have?
Well, yes, of course. It's because they have made this about personality, not about policy. And if I can just go back to running this ad, remember, Trump won Wyoming overwhelmingly. His favorability in Wyoming is very high. So if the Cheneys are trying to make this election a referendum on Trump, they're going to be sorely disappointed in the results because Trump will win on the ballot if he is the issue. And I think that Liz Cheney will ultimately lose in Wyoming. But additionally, this talk saying that President Trump is the greatest threat to American democracy. If we look back, we had the Brits in the War of 1812 literally burning our Capitol building to the ground. We had a civil war. We had two world wars. We had the Great Depression, where things could have gone another way economically for us. Maybe we never would have come out of that. So there's Al Qaeda, for example. I could rattle off a litany of threats that are more dangerous than one single man. And by the way, President Trump was one of the greatest presidents we've ever had. An amazing economy, somebody that had ISIS on the run. We were respected abroad again. So to compare him to some kind of danger is totally misleading. And also not to bring in the threat of a rising aggressive communist China. It just shows you how off base the Never Trump movement is.
Sure, it sure is. Thank you. You took me right where I wanted to go. But one more thing before I leave Dick Cheney and Liz Cheney. These people look around at the devastation that the Democrat Party and the current regime in Washington, in the White House, has unleashed on our people, the pain, the suffering. And they look at all that and say, no, we don't care about it. It just shows you how Dick Cheney couldn't give a damn about the pain that the American people are going through. Liz Cheney couldn't give a damn. They want to slay their white whale, and that's what they're doing right now. And you mentioned China. America's biggest threat, the Democrats and the Never Trump GOP are continuing to ignore to this day, is communist China. They've ramped up military exercises surrounding our ally Taiwan. Many, including NBC News, say the U.S. military no longer has an advantage over China's military. Aren't the Democrats and the Never Trump GOP to blame for allowing our military to degrade to where we can't protect our allies and our security interests, like microchip manufacturing, for example, Congressman?
Well, it's just not the budgeting issues. Remember, General Mattis said that we have to be at 5% above inflation year in and year out to rebuild the military. We've had a hard time reaching those numbers, and it's totally unacceptable. Also, we're not respected by our adversaries anymore. We were with President Trump, but with Biden and Blinken and the woke left kowtowing to communist China, showing acquiescence in the land war in Europe, and then the disastrous withdrawal and surrender from Afghanistan, we're not taking seriously. We're not speaking softly, carrying a big stick anymore. We're speaking loudly with nonsense from Biden and carrying no stick at all. I think what we need to do with these military exercises in the Taiwan Strait is this. We got to recognize that this Chinese Communist Party is looking to invade Taiwan. What we need to be doing is we need to be taking a sober look at that and making it very clear to the Chinese Communist Party that we will defend Taiwan. We also need to immediately start to supply Taiwan with the war arms that they need to defend the nation. We also need to build I would call it a NATO of the Pacific with Japan, the Philippines, India, Australia, and other allies to make sure that we encircle China in the Pacific. But we're not taking these steps, which is going to make a war with China. And China is preparing to fight with the United States. Be sure about that. It's going to make a coming war with China more difficult to win if we don't take these preemptive steps.
I'd park the Ronald Reagan battle group right there off the shore of Taiwan. Just leave them there, let's enjoy the scenery in Taiwan for a while and leave it there because we have every right to be there. Look, being a veteran, I wanted to get your reaction to Jon Stewart violently coming after another veteran over the PACT Act. Watch.
These people have suffered for 15 years because you're a
Look at them in the
troll.
face. Look at them in
You're
the
a
face.
troll.
I want the bill
You're
passed.
not in good faith.
I'm for the bill.
You're not in good faith.
So what's the problem? What are
My
you trying to do
question,
here?
my question
What is
is,
your question?
What are you
John,
trying to do here?
What?
why is John, I'm not even against you guys.
Say, Stewart later came back and apologized after he realized what he was doing was wrong. Stewart is right, though, I got to say, to blast the Republican Party for backing the $200 billion Chips Plus Everything in the Kitchen Sink Act with no funding for our sick and ill troops. But then Stewart, his left-wing party is poised to force Joe Biden's Build Back Broke bill, and it includes no help for our sick service members either. Shouldn't Stewart be blasting both political parties for turning their backs on our vets?
Well, first off, Jon Stewart shouldn't be acting like that, losing its cool, but it's very symbolic of the American left. Completely irrational, acting out of emotion, not caring about the facts on the ground. Again, the guy that Stewart was yelling at actually supported the PACT Act, but this is just very symbolic of how the left operates. Totally emotional, void of any kind of reason and rationality. But look, I can tell you that I voted for the PACT Act. I wish that it would have been discretionary spending instead of mandatory spending. And that was Pat Toomey's point leading into this. But we do have to take care of our veterans. But the behavior you saw from Jon Stewart, it's counterproductive. It's not helpful. And it raises the temperature. If the roles were reversed and this were somebody on the right that was acting like this, it would be wall-to-wall media coverage.
Yeah.
But because it's Jon Stewart, a darling of the left, it's ignored by the legacy media.
Well, I'd love to talk with him about it, Congressman. He has an open invitation to come here because, frankly, just like Mr. Posobiec was saying, we agree with you. We agree with you. And there is bipartisan blame for failing our vets once again. Thank you, sir. Appreciate your time and the service to the country. Congressman Guy Reschenthaler.
Thanks, Chris.